Okay. So let's kind of change gears a little bit here. Let's talk about your actual book or books. What are you actually putting out right now? What are you released? Have you released, or are you releasing? Where are we at in the scope of things?
I have 4 books out.
Okay, that's a jump.
Yeah, I have my first 3 books are Deadlock, Fallout, and Shattered. It's a 3-book series. It kind of it starts this my whole superhero universe. And then my latest book I just put out is just it's a novella. It's called Wrath and Blaze. Last year on my website, I put this story out a chapter at a time, once a month, kind of like a comic book.
Okay, I'm curious what platform are you using to do that as? You doing it from like an email list? Are you using something as a Gumroad or whatnot? Like, what's the approach there?
I have I have my own website, and people who are signed up to it get alerts. Plus, I'd go on to sites like Facebook and X, and I'd advertise.
The ultimate goal is you're using it as the attraction, the lead magnet to get people to the website, sign up, put them on the email list, and bring them into your ecosystem. It's good. That's the way you're supposed to do it. Tell me a little bit about these stories. Do you have a theme that you personally like to gravitate towards with your stories? Is there like an interconnected universe, or are they all kind of like one shots in their own place?
No, it's very interconnected. My first book, Deadlock, like I said, that kicks off the whole universe thing. There's these 2 alien races that have been at war for eons, and they're kind of deadlocked. So they find this out of the way planet that's nowhere near any of them. They just happen to find Earth, and their entire both armadas kind of like show up surrounding Earth, and each side picks a champion, and they augment them to fight, give them each basically superpowers. And they don't tell each other who they are, but they say, all right, you got to go find this guy and fight him. And whoever wins, that's who that alien species wins the war. So you have the hero, Eddie Solomon. He is a former LA detective, kind of down on his luck. He's not in a good place when the book starts. And he ends up getting zapped and given superpowers. Elsewhere in the country, there's this psychotic hitman who's in the middle of doing a job when he gets abducted by aliens and turned into their champion. And so Eddie, he spends the first third of the book getting used to his powers, figuring out what's happening, trying to put things together. And the bad guy, he has power, so he's reveling in it. So he's just going out and causing havoc and calling Eddie out. He's like, I don't know who you are, but come fight me.
Okay. And I'm just imagining he probably isn't having as difficult a time with his powers, is he? He's all the practice he can get because he doesn't care, willy nilly, just throwing them around. Whereas I'm sure our protagonist is struggling with his newfound power.
There's one scene in the book that I really love where the villain, Zealot, he shows up at this fictitious Nevada town and he just declares war on it. He just lays waste to this town. I mean, there's a news chopper that ends up showing up and he lets them live. He just kind of declares himself and shows them the carnage and he leaves, and hoping that'll bring Eddie out.
Is the idea of this tournament kind of like, is it more of like a tournament where each book kind of focuses on a new battle that these races have between us, or is that just kind of like a catalyzing moment? Like, do they matter more as time goes on, or do they kind of fade away into the background and we deal with more of like an earthly issue as things go on? I guess like book one on.
It's just the catalyst. In book 2, Fallout, I'll try not to give too much away in case anyone's interested in reading. But something happens that causes less than 1% of the population of the Earth to gain superpowers. Eddie has to come to grips that there's all this stuff going on. he may or may not have had a hand in it. Now he's working with different people and different groups to figure out what's going on, and a new threat pops up, a more earthly threat. And so that's what happens there. And in the third book, the second book leaves off on a cliffhanger. So the third book picks up there and kind of finishes everything off and kind of sets the whole universe into motion.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to imagine if I ask this question, you're probably going to have a better answer than most of my guests. So this will make me very happy. When you're looking at, like, say, your titular character or your main character, is that very indicative of the audience that you're writing for? Like, you have a very clear vision of who's reading your books, why they're reading your books, and the elements of character that they gravitate towards.
Yes. Like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s reading comic books. That's what I'm trying to reproduce here. I'm trying to recreate the feeling of a comic book in a novel form. Eddie, my main character, he's half Captain America, half Spider-Man. I mean, he used to be a cop, so he's got this very strong moral compass that leads him into danger all the time. But he's a little snarky like Spider-Man used to be in the old days, just taunting a villain and trying to get him to do something dumb, then he can come in and finish him off.
You know, when they didn't overcomplicate Spider-Man as a character, they let him be a snarky teenager before they had to worry about Mary Jane and all the relationships and the nonsense. Great. One of the things I feel, especially people that deal with comic-esque characters and comic book type themes, is that I'll be honest, just writers in general now, certainly in the independent sphere, they focus so deeply on their precious stories and not enough on the characters when they're talking about their books. The character is absolutely the more important part, because that's the body that you're stepping into. Like, that's who you're supposed to be empathizing with for the time that you're doing this. If you're not connecting with that at a deep visceral level, you're not going to have a very good time at the end of it. I finished a book yesterday, and after reading the whole book, it's like at no point did I personally feel connected to the character in any way. Like, I finished the book only because I needed to tack another notch on my Goodreads belt this year. To be completely honest, I could have put it down 10 minutes in, but it's like, and there's even a certain point, I'm like, are they really going to not flesh out this character in any more definition than this? And they never did. I never had a reason to really care about the people. They're so two-dimensional. It's like, I don't care. If it wasn't for Goodreads, this book would not be getting finished. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars just because, I don't know, it felt bad giving it less than 3 stars. It was a book that somebody wrote. It'd be pretty bad for me to give it less, I guess. So I appreciate good characters and allowing them to be the stand-in for us in books. One of the things that obviously we talked about, your normal guy who starts doing this, you got a family and wife, and I'm sure you didn't go out and get some huge advance from some big company to be the new white guy voice, middle-aged white guy voice in fiction.